All right. Guild Wars 2 Q&A, ArenaNet on Switch to yearly expansions, secrets of the obscure learnings, and 2024 updates. We're going to hear an interview with the man himself, game director Grouch, right here actually. This just came up a few days ago. In fact, 21st actually, just 2 days from the time of this right now. So yeah, this is actually very good Q&A. I read through a little bit about it. I didn't finish all of it, so we're going to go through some of it with myself. Pretty much, how has ArenaNet been doing with this new system of secrets of the obscure? Let's get right into it. Following the MMO 10-year anniversary celebrated last year, ArenaNet has picked up steam. Nice, okay. Partly thanks to Valve's namesake store, with the ongoing development of Guild Wars 2. The developer released the 4th expansion, Secrets of the Obscure, in August, and there's more coming between free content and paid expansions with the new yearly model. WCC FTech had the opportunity to access the studio's end-of-the-year blog post in advance, where ArenaNet confirmed Secrets of the Obscure has been a financial success and promised that the next update, which includes new story chapters, the Temple of Phoebe Strike challenge mode, 9 new weapon proficiencies, and the ability to unlock legendary armor, and the Wizard's Vault reward refresh will arrive early next year. This is pretty much going to be around February if we're following the pretty much delivery schedule of ArenaNet. They released the expansion in August of this year, 2023. They've released pretty much the second update in about November. So that gave them a 3-month time span, September, October, November. So if we follow that time span, the next one would be in somewhere in February, right? Probably late February. And then that means the final expansion release for Secrets of the Obscure, the final update for this expansion, will probably wrap up in around May, which gives them another 3-month cycle to then introduce the next expansion after this, the 5th one after Secrets of the, or the 6th one after Secrets of the Obscure. Actually, no, 5th one. The 5th one would be pretty much in August of next year. So that would allow them to do a full year cycle between expansions. So at the same time, we're able to set up a chat with game director Josh Davis, Grouch the man, to discuss the big changes, the game's development pace, their learnings from the Secrets of the Obscure, and what the future looks like for Guild Wars 2. So, there's a oh, by the way, apparently there's this thing. There's a 75% discount from today to January 4 on the first 2 expansions, Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, which are priced at $7.49, while the 3rd expansion, End of Dragons, is 50% off and priced at $14.99. Wow, that is a huge discount. That's a huge get. Honestly, if you guys could buy this right now, whoever's watching this, if you could buy these right now, that is a steal for the amount of content you get out of those 3 expansions. These discounts are available both via the official website and Steam. The official website also offers the Elder Dragon Saga Collection, the first 3 expansions, at just $19.99. Yeah, which you probably just buy those. Just buy the first 3 expansions at $20 basically. Wow. Okay, let's look into it. The first question comes up. So there was a 4.5 year span between 2017's Path of Fire and 2022's End of Dragons. Now though, you've settled on a much quicker pace for the expansions. What prompted this change? Will you attempt to keep the yearly expansion model for the foreseeable future? So Grouch answered with, there are 2 main drivers behind this change. First, we want to provide a better game experience to fans by adopting a more consistent release cadence, eliminating extended content droughts, and increasing support for the core game, World vs. World, Fractals, etc. I'm not sure why you'd say World vs. World. This has been, I don't know if there's been enough support for World vs. World, but yeah. Fractals, at least we are getting a Fractal game mode, which is coming with a CM, so that's not bad. And I do agree with the consistent release cadence. That's been an issue with Guild Wars 2, is not knowing when the next thing is happening, right? We had a very good period between Heart of Thorns where the first expansion of the game released, or if you want to even count it, we had Season 2, which was kind of like a, more or less like a pre-expansion, setup. Then you had the expansion Heart of Thorns. Immediately after Heart of Thorns, we did have the Living World Season 3, which provided some nice maps. At least Bloodstone Fen, I think my favorite from that Living World. Then we had Path of Fire immediately, so LS3 felt even more of a setup to Path of Fire, which then, after Path of Fire released, we got Living World Season 4. Probably the best Living World we've actually ever received. And that was good. We had a very good 2-year, honestly, really good update pace of items and things that came through, because in all of that, we had raids happening, we had a few more fractals added, and there was some PvP implementations to some approach. Unfortunately, there was some issues. I think a lot of people remember it as having a lot of content, but at the same time, there was a little bit of like, when's the next thing? We still always had this, when's the next thing? When's the next update? When's the next Living World? And not all of them were roughly at the same exact time. Sometimes there was an extra month or two gap between episodes. So I think, yeah, the expansion, you know that you're having something in every 3 months, is probably a much better outlook compared to the old system. Second, we wanted to adopt a dev cycle that would allow our team to maintain a healthy work-life balance. We're in a marathon, not in a sprint. The structure of this approach allows us to take a long-term outlook towards planning, which helps with scheduling and staffing. Yeah, this kind of goes hand in hand, actually. This has been a huge issue with the game, is that, like, because they don't know when they're releasing something, planning and structures and things, and even if it's like specific game modes, they kind of overextend too much, right? So I think, yeah, having this yearly thing has been, honestly, it's been good. I think if you just look at it from the release schedule, I kind of like this yearly structure better than before, where you have to maybe wait 1.5 whole year for an expansion or something. So you've said Secrets of the Obscure was financially successful for ANET. Can you share a ballpark of how many developers you've got actively working on Guild Wars 2 content, rather than possibly on other projects now? Also, how big is the Steam player base compared to those who play through the regular launcher? Oh, this is a long answer that Grouch actually answers. So, okay, so our current team size is roughly what it was during the development of LS4, which is about 15% larger than it was at the release of End of Dragons 2022. Thanks to the support of our fans, we've been able to grow our team in recent years, but we've been very careful not to expand too quickly or beyond our means. Maintaining stability for our employees is a top priority for myself and the rest of the leadership team. It is worth noting that Guild Wars 2 is a fairly small team compared to many of the direct competitors. In some cases, we're less than half the size of other studios. We're scrappy, but, you know, basically, they got a lot of heart, okay? They got a lot of heart. This isn't new for us or our player-friendly monetization philosophy. The lack of subscription fees do create some tight constraints for us to work within that others don't necessarily have to contend with, but there's a trade-off that we're happy to make. Yeah, there's a bit of an issue because we get a lot of MTX stuff in the gem store, which is fine. They gotta pay the bills somehow. But that's the thing, right? No sub fees means there has to be a trade-off in things. This is kind of where the balance probably becomes problematic, because how do you introduce enough, you know, skins or cool looking items in the gem store, and then still balancing something in the game so that people can still, you know, spend maybe 3 hours completing a quest to get something, or an achievement to get something, right? I think that's the issue, is that there's more like, of course, a huge reliance on the gem store, and not enough of like crumbs thrown to like, okay, this skin looks nice, do we need to put it on the gem store? Let's make something out of it, right? I think those kind of tiny things add up over time, right? You could say like, oh, that's like one small quest that might take you 2 hours, and you maybe go around the world and do this and that, and then you get the skin. But what if it was like, you know, all of a sudden you looked at it, and over a course of a year, they managed to add over 25 or 30 mount skins that are like that. That's, you've just created 25 to 30 hours of content that wouldn't have been there, right? They have to be careful, because they can't also put too many things that they would rather have money made on the gem store. So yeah, that philosophy for monetization does create those kind of decision making, right? What can we make? And yeah, there is the idea of why don't make an actual paid battle pass, right? That people can still benefit from, that doesn't take too much away from people who don't choose to pay for the optional battle pass. But that creates too much. Give us another 2-hour tunnel meta and we run past everything. I'd rather not. So yeah, I already took my meds. I actually took it with the giveaway. So I don't know if this is much to say. Like, your studio is 15% larger than End of Dragons, and it was basically during LS4. If you guys remember, LS4 was also a little bit of a skeleton crew that was, granted, it was the best expansion we got for Living World. In terms of Living World, it was the best expansion, but or best Living World season that we got. However, I'm not sure about this 15% larger, right? We knew at the time that in 2019 they were working on 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever different projects, and Guild Wars 2 wasn't actually like the only thing that they were working on. In fact, majority weren't even working on Guild Wars 2. So I hope that this is switched now to where this is the content, right? Guild Wars 2 is, yeah, we actually have a little bit of more or less, we actually have a bit of consistency and focus on this as the main thing. As for Steam, it remains to be a small proportion for our overall player base, but this wasn't a surprise to us given that Guild Wars 2 was available for 10 years on a first-party platform before launching on Steam. Yeah, I think a lot of people 6 months later were like, how, we told you so. The Steam thing didn't do anything for them. And yeah, I don't really I don't see it that way, right? I think I agree. Like, the game, the actual launcher is available from their website directly, right? There are Steam players who will look at it and be like, yeah, I'll buy that game. But I think people underestimate just how many Steam players would rather just buy it directly from Steam, or if they could just go to the website launcher itself. Not to say that there are players who'd rather actually do that, right? A lot of players probably just see it on Steam and probably don't even bother going on the website. But I'm not surprised that a lot of people would just go directly to the launcher itself and just get the main thing from the main website. I've done this a lot. Like, if I know that there's a game on a launcher and it's available directly from its website, I'll just go directly to the website, right? So, yeah, I think they have an okay point with the players from Steam. And I'd imagine there is a trickle of them that came directly from the website. So, our new player acquisition numbers are in the strongest they've been since 2016-17. In fact, we saw more first-time players in 2023 than we did at any point during the COVID pandemic gaming boom. This was a pleasant surprise. That's actually interesting. I'm sure they will never release the numbers, but that's very good to hear that they actually reached a new peak since 2020. Given we're entering 2024, 2020 is 4 years behind us now. So that's good that they've entered a new peak, right? Another boom for the game in terms of first-time players. That's very important. I think that's a very healthy thing. And in general, I think if you look at the game, there are a lot of people playing, right? There is a lot of activity in the game. Regardless of if you engage with the content or not, there's people logging in, and there's people at different points of the game. You said you're now able to take a long-term approach to planning with lessons learned from Secrets of the Obscure that will apply to Expansion 5 in very meaningful ways. Could you go into specifics of which areas will be affected? We're learning a lot about how we develop and release content on this cadence, which absolutely has a downstream effect on the player experience. The overall shape of development between expansions 4 and 5 are very similar, timelines, resourcing, etc. Even if the content and features are not. This means we're able to focus more on refining our development processes than reinventing them. The better that we can identify production issues like undocumented dependencies, bottlenecks, resourcing issues, means that we can proactively address those issues in future dev cycles. Yeah, again, this is where this 1-year expansion helps them, right? Like, with Secrets of the Obscure, they started development, and of course it's difficult because this is, you know, they finished End of Dragons, which was the last expansion under the old way that they used to do it, the old model of expansions. But they were more or less underway with Secrets of the Obscure. So while we didn't see too much updates in 2022, in fact, it was a lot of like Living World 1 rehash, revisiting, and some fine-tuning to the game systems from bits and pieces here and there. We got, you know, upgrade to the engine and things like that. A lot of heavy lifting work in that sense. And it was necessary that they did all of that. Secrets of the Obscure being released in August of 2023, they probably were done with the expansion, you know, sometime at the start of this year, right? It was more or less, they had it ready to ship, and it was just a matter of like when to ship. And I'd imagine that allowed them, you know, to help with their flow for the next expansion. Because Secrets of the Obscure, they're literally releasing things in 3-month cycles. They're not developing things on the go. Like, the expansion's been done, right? The update we're getting in February, it's already done. The update we're getting in May, more or less it's 90% done. They just need the final touches and the updates are ready to go, which means they're literally already working on the next expansion after this one. They're working on expansion number 5. So this allows them to always be, probably in my guess, maybe 5 to 6 months ahead of expansion cycles, maybe if not more. So pretty much we'll literally have more information on expansion 5. I'd imagine as soon as this expansion wraps up. Literally once it's done in May, June, July, they're literally on the grind to hyping up the next thing because they have it ready to go. And yeah, I think with features wise, season 4 focused, or Secrets of the Obscure focused more on game systems, right? We got the weapon master training, which definitely changed the system of the game, more or less. Yeah, it kind of did because it opened up the weapons for a lot of classes. We got the Wizard's Vault, which is an overhaul of a daily system. So a lot of game feature updates more than gameplay, right? Well, the weapon system is gameplay, but more or less we did get more refining of items and features, right? So that doesn't mean we'll have that same experience in expansion 5. Expansion 5 could be different. They could maybe decide we're going to focus maybe a bit more on the content in this expansion, right? I don't imagine they'll stick with only having 2 strikes or 1 fractal, right? If they're done with the gameplay features or the features of the game kind of updates. So that allows them to maybe resource more in other areas should they choose to do that, or if they're going to really just stick with this model, they stick with this model. From our experience with Secrets of the Obscure alone, we've adjusted development schedules, review processes, dev, resource allocations, documentation and communication practices, and more. All of these contribute to some degree to improving the quality of what we deliver. Yeah, I think, again, long-term planning just allows them to schedule everything better and plan things into a more smoother process. So in Secrets of the Obscure, you have ditched the elite specializations added to each of the previous expansions in favor of a new weapon proficiencies. Does that mean no more elite specs will be introduced in future Guild Wars 2 expansions? We're not ready to shut the door on elite specializations quite yet. It's always possible that they'll make a return in a future expansion. For now, we like the flexibility that focusing on weapons offers, and we've proven out that we can add new layers of gameplay interaction through just the weapons themselves. We plan to focus on weapons for our next expansion, but we have a fun surprise in store to keep things fresh and exciting. Okay, that's not too bad. In fact, I honestly would say I would rather not see another elite specialization even for the next expansion after whatever we're getting next year. Honestly, I think we have enough. We have a core and 3 specs for each class. I don't really want to see a 4. I personally don't feel like we need another specialization, especially because they've started like really simplifying some of them to the point where there's not much that one does that the other doesn't in terms of theme wise and like what it provides. So I'd rather they stick with the weapon stuff more than it does with adding more specializations. That's more of me. How did you settle on these specific weapon proficiencies for each class? Also, is the ranger ever going to get a rifle pistol? You know what? The ranger with a rifle sounds cool. Yeah, when are we getting that? There are many ways to go about designing new kits or abilities. For example, you might start by identifying interesting high-level themes and aesthetics and then building the gameplay around those concepts. For example, the gunslinging necromancer. That's how many of the base professions and elite specializations came to be in Guild Wars 2. This is how we got, things like the Bladesworn as well, for example. For the Secrets of the Obscure, we chose a slightly different tack. We focused on addressing shortcomings in each profession. We started the new weapon design process by identifying gameplay gaps in each profession's kits across PvE, PvP, and World vs. World. This included examining the high-level roles such as traditional boon support, healing and damage, and more. Niche considerations like non-projectile range damage options for World vs. World. Due to the amount of projectile hate via reflects and blocks. The goal in all of this is to make the professions usable in a wider variety of contexts. I think, yeah, they've managed to do that. If you ask me, the game right now is the classes are as balanced as they could be, right? If you compare them to years and years ago. This is more or less each class can serve any kind of role at this point. Yeah, this is right now where as good as it could be. Unless they introduce another patch and more differences and discrepancies happen. But yeah. But there's still plenty of gaps left for us to address, but we're making good progress between the introduction of weapon mastery training, the latest weapon proficiencies, and our ongoing skills and balance work. As for the ranger getting rifle, pistol, no comment. Didn't say no. He didn't say no. You recently conducted the weapon proficiencies beta. Community feedback seemed to range from very positive to quite negative, depending on the class and weapon edition. Can you share any tweaks that will be based on that feedback? We're not ready to share any news, but we'll be back early next year with a blog post that outlines the changes we're making based on player feedback. Again, this is something where I think you just don't satisfy everybody, so it's gonna happen. You're not gonna satisfy everyone with this. I would say it has helped with World vs. World in terms of reviving, you know, certain fun activities in World vs. World. However, I don't know how long a game mode like that continues to gain activity just based on weapons, right? Sure, it's like a new toy, but how far does that one take you, right? Rather than the game mode itself getting some major overhaul, like alliances, for example. The Wizard's Vault objective seemed a bit too skewed towards PvP. Is there any chance more PvE objectives can be added to the mix? Yes, we plan to continue refining, adding new objectives across game modes for new and existing content alike. Look at that, Kiba, your favorite game mode, PvP. You'll get something eventually. Yeah, I think I'd like to see that, right? Like that the objectives seem a bit more driven towards PvE. You know, PvP and WW definitely could use a bit more help in that regard, so that it enables players in those game modes to actually have something as well. There's not enough variety, but I will say they have addressed they've addressed the Wizards Vault at least daily objective changes very well. They managed to quickly fix it. It was very limited. You only had 3. Now you have more options to go through. So instead of just like those 3 that you can only do, they gave you like 6-7 options and you can complete 4 out of those. So I do like that they've adjusted changes very fast. In September, you essentially delayed the alliance system in favoring of going live with the long anticipated World vs. World restructuring. Is there any update you can provide on the alliance system? Will it return at some point next year? The terms world restructuring and alliances are often used by our community interchangeably, despite being very different things. World restructuring describes the new team-based WW matchmaking system that we've been developing for the past few years, while alliances are a subcomponent of that system that allows multiple small-sized, mid-sized guilds to group together for matchmaking. As we started digging into alliance implementation, it became increasingly clear to us that we were on the path to building a system that would largely be duplicative of guilds and the functionality that they offer. Players can already create alliance-like guilds that contain up to 500 players. Now, the main downside of this pivot is that not every player has a free guild slot they're willing to use to join a new super guild. We're actively looking into solutions for this that don't require the steep development investment that alliances would. We should have more news to share on that. No! No! The alliances are dead, man! Are you serious? This basically just confirms it. Alliances dead. It's dead in the water. Your hopes and dreams since 2017. Alliances soon TM. No more. It's actually dead. I feel like this is actually an answer of them acknowledging that, yeah, but what's the actual difference between just joining a guild and being part of a guild that is your set as your WW guild and then you're with them? I feel like this kind of just addressed that. Like, what was the point of the alliance system if you could just do that with a guild? And people could just dedicate their 5th slot or 4th slot or whatever to... It's just basically... This just, to me, feels like it just... Yeah, alliances are not happening. They're still dead set on figuring out a proper world restructuring system, but alliances is basically done. Throw it in the trash. Your hopes and dreams have been crushed. Alliances no more. That's it. Yeah, I'm a little bit sad about this because the system looked cool. The alliance implementation and the UI in concept and theory is very cool. It's very similar, even a bit more advanced than Guild Wars 1 system, but I would love to have seen it in Guild Wars 2. But this doesn't feel to me that like, yeah, we're working on it. This feels to me like we've acknowledged that there is a little bit of a mismatch because you can join multiple guilds in Guild Wars 2. So what is the point of an alliance anyway? If you could just join a guild and just have everyone who wants to world versus world together in that guild, and that's your alliance guild basically. It's basically just confirmed that it's dead in the water. No more copium. No. Anyway, for new players, navigating through Guild Wars 2's many currencies can be confusing. Is there any plan to consolidate any of them? Yes, please. Actually, yes. We need to consolidate. Like, seriously, look at this. Look at this, guys. Come on. This needs to be consolidated. Like, what is all of this? Look at all these currencies. Yeah, fix this. We need to fix this. Honestly, we do need to fix this. There's way too many, and we've been saying this all the time. We have a long list of core game improvements we'd like to make, and this is one of the many items on that list. A comprehensive update to currencies is a big undertaking, so we're likely to do it in smaller chunks as time allows. For example, we took a step towards currency unification last year with the consolidation of dungeon currency into Tales of Dungeon Delving. So yeah, definitely more of this. You know, I'd like to see more and more. I understand that there is a setback to this when they do it, because if ANET, for example, were to consolidate all of, let's say, Heart of Thorns currencies into just one currency, right? What that means is the players will go to the map that gives them that currency the fastest. So that would naturally be something like Orc Basin's meta, or Chalk Garand, like Tangled Depths meta. Less people will be more inclined to go to maps like Verdant Brink or Dragonstand, where they take 45-50 minutes of your time, when they could just do it with a meta that takes 15 minutes of your time. So this does create that kind of problem. Of course, people do go to the other maps for hopes of other items and rewards, but that is an issue with the game, right? If you consolidate, people will find the fastest way to get something. So I understand they can't do it for everything. However, I do need to see more of this, because there is a little too many currencies to the point where it does get to a lot of new players confusing. Like, what's this for? What's this used for? What's this worth? Can I change this into something else to get something better, etc.? So more allocation and consolidation. The base game's dungeons look like a bit like leftover content at this point, but they can be really cool in terms of story and atmosphere. Did you consider adding challenge modes to make them relevant once again for the endgame loop? Nope, this is not something we're currently considering. Just literally like, no, yeah, we're not considering dungeons. Dungeons, dead content. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that's the way it is. There's literally nothing I could say more than that. Literally just no. While I'd love to see a challenge mode, it's just, yeah, it's not gonna happen. Unfortunately, not something they'll ever do. As a follow-up on the endgame topic, could you share which activities you plan to focus on for future improvements and expansion? In the first half of next year, they're introducing the Temple of Thebes Strike Mission Challenge mode, which is coming up. Of course, we are supposed to, with every new model of these expansions, we're supposed to get 2 new strikes, 1 fractal, and then we're supposed to get the challenge mode for these 3 items, right? The 2 strikes should have a challenge mode. The fractal should also have a challenge mode. Yeah, so yeah, this is normal. This is standard, what we already know that we're getting from these expansions. Beyond that, I think fans will be pretty stoked when they hear about our plans for endgame PvE content in our next expansion. Honestly, to me, you know, when something like Blizzard says something like this, I would be inclined to basically take their word for it. Like, you know what? Yeah, I might believe you that you might deliver on some endgame content in the next expansion, because if they have a track record. Final Fantasy, I don't know. I'm not much aware of how that game plays, but they do have very regular content, right? Whether it's difficult or not, another issue. But when it comes to Guild Wars 2, when they say fans will be pretty school, honestly, I find this hard to believe, to be honest. And I love this game, but to me, like, I can never basically take their word for it anymore. It's basically, I will see, right? Release the thing, and I will judge it based on when it comes up. Like, that's where Guild Wars 2 is at. I don't think Guild Wars 2 is able to basically say, can you take our word for it anymore? It's just, unfortunately, this is something where, to me at least, I'll be like, oh, all right, cool. Endgame content next year. Whatever you release, I guess I'll see it when you release it, you know? Like, hopefully it's good, but I'll see it when you release it. There's nothing really like to get excited for me personally. I don't know. I feel like this is where I'm at with the game in terms of, like, just, I have to see it. I can't really just say, yeah, you know what? I'm excited for that. I can't wait. It's just, I'll see it and I'll be the judge of that. And that's just the way it is. That is the way it is. Happy birthday. Thank you. Thank you. Technically, well, my birthday's been over 30 minutes ago, but you know what? Somewhere in your part of the world, it's still my birthday. Thank you. Thank you. 28 years of age. And still playing games and streaming. What am I doing? But you know what? Yeah, we're here. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate that. Aura and Silver Moon. Thank you. Anyway, on to the next question. There is a growing interest in alternate modes like hardcore servers, classic servers, etc. in the MMO genre. Do you have any plans to offer anything like servers with more challenging PvE difficulty, for example? It's an interesting idea, but it's not a priority for us. Trend chasing is inherently risky and can potentially alienate your existing fans if it goes poorly. From what we've observed in the industry over the past few years, it usually doesn't pan out. For now, we're focused on serving our current community and making Guild Wars 2 the best it can be. I agree with this because, for example, the hardcore and the classic server stuff is honestly more mainstream in WoW. Right? Of course, it's very cool in World of Warcraft, but it's created a divide in WoW. It's not like it's entirely like all nice and fun. Like, you have the classic server community and the retail community literally divided. Like, they don't like each other. A lot of players certainly don't feel like the other game mode is better than theirs. It's created a divide. You have a split fan base, actually. You have the classic server fan base. Those players don't even care for retail. And you have the retail fan base who don't care for classic. And same with the hardcore audience. There's certainly it's had successes to different things because they've created two different communities. But the disadvantage is now they've alienated one community with the other. One doesn't think that the other one has a better game mode than theirs, and vice versa. So it's not all fun and games like that for them. So yeah, it's definitely an issue to be careful of. And again, with classic servers, it's really only worked in WoW. Is there any other game that has done classic servers yet? I don't know. As far as I know, it's World of Warcraft only. And in Guild Wars 2, to be honest, it's never gonna work. Guild Wars 2 before Heart of Thorns, it's not super exciting when you look at it now compared to WoW. You know, WoW before any expansion, right? I think it's, yeah. Certainly, like, the skill sets and everything, the difficulty will be different because, yeah, we don't have the power creep of the game if it releases in Classic. But I don't find like it will work with Guild Wars 2. In Guild Wars 2, it doesn't feel like the world is there and you're gonna die in a Classic server in open world. Even back in the early days, I don't remember like open world really being super difficult to that extent, right? Like anywhere, any mob can kill you. Certainly wasn't like that. It was fun for organizing, you know, like world bosses like Tech, Triple Trouble. Those definitely certainly proved a challenge early days, but they quickly, very easily were successfully defeated. Fractals were fun as well. I think the fractals were probably the most interesting concept before Heart of Thorns, so maybe something there. But overall, I don't think it would serve them best to go with this. They definitely should focus on their current community. I don't think they can do what WoW is doing. WoW's also introduced Classic when they've already had about close to 16 years of gameplay of the game, right? And people forget just how big the world of World of Warcraft is in hindsight. To a lot of other MMOs, it is a huge world. And the grind of leveling in that game is much more than the grind of leveling in Guild Wars 2. So, many other reasons on why they should just stick to their current content. All right, last question to wrap it up. Since it sounds like the game will be supported for many years to come, are you evaluating the addition of modern rendering features such as TWA support, which could in turn open up upscalers like NVIDIA DLSS and AMD FSR? Because I'm not an expert in all of this, but I assume this is more or less graphical or game engine enhancements. As for those support, it's not a priority for us right now, but it's certainly a possibility down the road. There's plenty of lower hanging fruit that we like to get to first. We believe Guild Wars 2 will be around for years to come, so we've been putting an increased focus on long-term tech investments, both in terms of player-facing improvements, visual fidelity, performance, and developer-facing improvements, tools, and workflow. We completed our upgrade to DX11 from DX9 earlier this year, and on top of unlocking some small performance improvements, it's also opened some interesting possibilities for our developers for upcoming content, like new shaders and lighting options. Nice. Those are the questions. I think, yeah, down the road, not a problem. I think they just upgraded to DX11, so it's a little too early to go to the next thing. So I think right now they could focus on the gameplay features. I think let them get the groove, because the next expansion, the 5th one, is also the second one in their current new expansion cycle, right? So they'll be really in their groove right now. Secrets of the Obscure was the first one, and then the next one is where they're really in the groove, and that's where they can... What I'd like to see is that like they can kind of pick and choose how they focus these expansions. Because everything's coming out on a year, that doesn't mean you have to strictly, okay, strictly 2 strikes, strictly 1 fractal for every expansion. You know, hopefully, like, if they're done with the gameplay systems improvements, right? We got Wizard's Vault, which is a new daily system update, battle pass-like system. And that certainly took a lot of their time, I bet. We got the Weapon Master training, which took a lot of their time. So a lot of these fine-tuning things that they could honestly put towards more energy to something else. And also even the maps, right? We have basically 3 maps. We have 3 open world maps that are part of the story, and we have 1 hub. I would like to see them do away with the hubs. Like, I feel like the amount of time it takes for them to create another like player hub map for us to like just have our like NPCs and banks and everything in place, I feel like that takes way too much development that could just be otherwise used to make maybe another strike or make another fractal, or maybe make some of the maps, open world maps, even more exciting. To be honest with you, I didn't really like the open world map metas in this expansion. They're very, like, honestly, they're not challenging. The open world is the most exciting part about Guild Wars 2. And so, to me, to have your best game mode be kind of a very, very light boss as the thing for this expansion, I felt like they needed to go guns out blazing, right? I do think that it was a mismatch, that both metas for those 2 maps, Amnitas and the Skywatch, were more or less The bosses aren't too difficult. Compare that with DE, compare that with even, Suiting Province, or they just felt a bit more fun, and even with some of the older expansion maps. So I think definitely the open world bosses could have been better. Convergences, not really the most fun or engaging content. It's just okay, not too bad. Apparently they do fail, so I mean, not everyone's able to succeed in them. But I'd like to see them maybe stop doing player hubs and just use that extra time that you would focus on a new city or a new hub and just do it into something else that could generate another piece of content that players would be able to engage more with than just AFKing somewhere. So definitely more of that. So yeah, who knows? I'm not going to say they're going to move into, instead of 2 strikes, 3 strikes, but I think 3 strikes would be a bit better, because we're coming up at the end of this storyline and the final boss isn't getting a strike, which means, okay, the story mission will be fun, but the fact that that's not a strike, it feels like a little bit of a mismatch, right? I think we should get a 3rd strike for the expansions. How they manage that, of course, again, development resources, and they do have to plan accordingly to that, because they did say that's important to them to be able to not overdo it. But I think 3 strikes is better in terms of just balancing out these things, where you could have 2 strikes at the start of the game, at the start of the expansion. The 3rd strike should be maybe towards the end of the expansion, or in the middle of the expansion somewhere, right? Because, yeah, we're going to wrap up the story without a 3rd strike to also close it out. I think that certainly feels a little bit of a gap there. So, yeah, I think those kind of things that they can maybe improve upon in the next expansion. Hey, Planix, thanks so much for the raid. Appreciate it. Thank you. Big raid by Plenga. Thank you. Thanks, buddy. So, yeah, I think a third strike is probably something that I would like to see. It feels very weird that they don't have a 3rd strike and basically what is going to be the end of the story for this expansion. So however they have to maneuver that, I don't know. But not to say that they will even do it, but something to consider. Food for thought. Feels birthday, man. Thank you. There is, yes. 28. I'm getting there. I'm getting close to 30. Another year closer to 30. So, yeah. I think that's it. That's my points with this Q&A. Yeah, Josh Davis, Grouch the man, the game director of Guild Wars 2. This is his Q&A. And yeah, I think these are my points on that. Let me know what you guys think and comment them below and tell me. Do you guys agree with some of the answers? Do you disagree? What would you like to see? Let me know down in the comments. But until next time, YouTube, I'll see you when I see you. Take care.